Good morning and welcome to a special edition of Close Up from Iowa. I'm Adam Sexton. Thanks for joining us. The caucuses will soon be underway, sending up a signal that will be closely watched in first in the nation, New Hampshire. Can Bernie Sanders notch the victory that so narrowly eluded him here back in 2016? Will Joe Biden be able to live up to the poll numbers? Can a dark horse candidate like an Amy Klobuchar or an Andrew Yang pull off a surprise? But one of the biggest question marks of all has to be Pete Buttigieg, the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana. He started in relative obscurity and is now poised to do well here. Some would say he needs to do very well, as in win the Iowa caucuses, in order to prove that his campaign is the real deal. The road to Marshalltown could be considered the road to victory in 2020. This community of 27,000, an hour outside of Des Moines, voted twice for Barack Obama, and then in 2016 flipped to Donald Trump. At the Midnight Ballroom, voters filed in to hear from Pete Buttigieg, who a little more than a decade ago was a campaign volunteer crisscrossing the state.
And I have very high hopes for the state of Iowa, because I was knocking on doors here in 2008 for a senator from Illinois when this state changed what America thought was possible in who we might nominate to be the next president. I watched that happen. And then that's right, I got stuck in a snowdrift. Somebody knows our story. It's a long story. You've never seen a canvassing clipboard used in so many ways. We use it as a shovel. We tried to use it as a ramp to get the car out of the ditch. Finally, this farmer had to come save us. And it turned out he was a Bill Richardson supporter, but I tried to get him to be our second choice. You always got to be careful. You never know when you could be netting a vote. But anyway, I remember that feeling when Iowa made history.
In a one-on-one interview with News 9, we asked the former South Bend mayor if he believes he's on the cusp of making some history of his own.
I think the key now is to show that I'm the right nominee to defeat Donald Trump and have a vision for how to govern the country for the moment that comes next. I think a lot of the folks I'm seeing on the trail, more than anything, just want to be sure that we are prepared to win in an election that's going to be the fight of our lives. And in order to get that right, that means stepping away from the old arguments and the old fights of the past and focusing on issues and challenges that are going to be completely new compared to what we were thinking about just days or certainly years and decades ago.
In these final days before Iowans come together to caucus, Buttigieg is drawing some new and very direct contrasts with other candidates in the top tier of the race.
We've got some respectful but meaningful differences among the candidates who are coming to your communities asking for your support. Vice President Biden has been talking about the idea that we can't afford to take a risk on somebody new. But I believe history has shown us that we can't afford to take the risk of falling back on the familiar and expecting the same Washington playbook to help us against this president. Senator Sanders, speaking of to goals that we all share, has offered a politics that says it's all or nothing. It's my way or the highway. At a moment when we finally have an American majority that actually believes that we can and should look to the public sector to make sure everybody has insurance. They're just not so sure about the idea of kicking people off their private plans.
What is with that shift there? Why call out specifically a Joe Biden, or say you're different from an Amy Klobuchar?
Well, we've reached the point where it's critical for folks to see the choices in front of them. And of course, I respect and appreciate everyone running for president, but we have very different approaches. Vice President Biden is saying that we can't afford to take the risk of having somebody new. I believe we can't afford the risk of going back to the same playbook, because my party only ever wins the White House when we do it with somebody offering a new vision. Senator Sanders believes that we have to have this kind of all the way out, all or nothing approach. I don't think that's going to make it possible, not only to win, but to govern, where we got to do big things. We have a majority to do big things, but we got to make sure that we keep everybody together as we do it in a polarized time. So what I'm offering, I think, compared to my competitors, is the right approach, the right balance, the best way to govern well, but also the best way to win big.
One of the former mayor's biggest obstacles has been his lack of traction with a key Democratic constituency, voters of color. Some say the policies are there, but the sense of trust and familiarity that only develops with time and experience is not.
I think that his intentions are pure and he wants to do it. I just don't think that he has enough life experiences, work experiences with people of color and African Americans to know the best things to do, the best decisions to make. I think he's on that journey and he'll get there. I think I could vote for Pete Buttigieg in a few election cycles. This is just not the one.
Will that change, do you think, if you can send a signal in Iowa and New Hampshire that you are a viable or winning candidate?
You know, one of the biggest things that is on the minds of black voters in the South that I talk to is that question of, can you win? Are you the right candidate to take on Donald Trump? The first chance to prove that comes, of course, through the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primaries. So I do think that whole new groups of voters are available to hear our message if and only if we have a good showing in these first steps.
What's the difference between the Iowa caucus and New Hampshire primary? Is there a tangible kind of difference in terms of how you win and how you campaign here?
Certainly the styles of campaigning can be different from state to state, but I think the fundamental message is the same. The values that I've been talking about for a year now are the same, and the imperative of ensuring that we are ready to defeat Donald Trump, turn the page, and start a new era. Walking away from the old fights, leaving the politics of the past in the past, and being ready to win and govern. That's going to be the same no matter where I'm campaigning.
As noted before, Marshalltown is one of those Obama to Trump communities. These swing towns have been a target for Buttigieg from the beginning. You made 3 visits in this cycle to Claremont, New Hampshire, a town that voted for Barack Obama by big margins twice, then went for Bernie Sanders in the primary, and then went to Donald Trump. Why is it important to you to win back those areas?
Well, these are communities that remind me a lot of my own. And when you see that there are counties in Iowa or communities in New Hampshire that supported President Obama but then supported Donald Trump, I think we have an obligation to make sure that the message is getting out there. And I'm meeting so many people who don't want to be defined by the vote in the last election, are looking ahead to the next election. Not just Democrats, but independents, and a lot of what I like to call future former Republicans who are ready to cross over as long as we can show that they are welcome in this movement that we're building. That's a big focus for my campaign.
As the impeachment trial fades from the headlines, Buttigieg indicates it's time to look ahead and let the people decide.
Unless you were a senator, you don't have a vote in that process. You do have a vote in this process. And so no matter what has played out on the floor of the Senate, this is an opportunity for the American people to be the ultimate jurors. That's what the 2020 election process is all about.
On policy, we asked Buttigieg how he'd be handling the current coronavirus outbreak.
Well, these global health security issues are just one more example of why the next president is going to face challenges that are different than what dominated the attention of Washington years or decades ago. It means connecting with our international partners because by its very nature, this is a threat that crosses international boundaries, and making sure we have not just a national strategy but an international strategy to contain any kind of contagion, to accelerate treatment and prevent any kind of spread of an epidemic.
And the Afghanistan war veteran had some choice words for President Trump in response to the commander-in-chief's comments, referring to the traumatic brain injuries suffered by troops in last month's Iranian rocket attack on a U.S. military base in Iraq as, quote, headaches.
Traumatic brain injury is incredibly serious. It is one of the signature injuries that troops come home from in the post-9/11 wars. And to have a president minimize the importance of that or not understand how serious it is, when I can tell you it can be a lot more serious than bone spurs. Just one more example why we need somebody in the White House who actually has some idea of what it is like to be sent to war by a U.S. president.
So the candidate they call Mayor Pete has gone from relative unknown to bona fide contender over the last year.